Hello and good day. This is Christopher Emge from the Greater Bloomington Chamber of Commerce's Success School doing a career video. I have Chris with me today. If you want to introduce yourself, my guest.
Yeah, hello. My name is Chris Rundell. I've been in the field of early childhood education for about 28 years. Currently, I work at the Ellettsville Early Childhood Center, and we're located within the Ellettsville Primary School.
Well, great. Well, how did you get involved in early childhood development?
Yeah, so it was an interesting path. Hold on, I'm going to walk with the camera over here and shut the door so we can hear each other well. My aunt was a Head Start bus driver when I was a child, and of course, back then this will sound really odd, but the rules then were very different. So there wasn't all the liability stuff, and I used to ride the Head Start bus with her, and I knew then that I wanted to be an early childhood educator. I told her when I was like 6 or 7 years old, I'm going to be a Head Start teacher when I grow up. And that is, in fact, what happened.
So, give me a sense of what goes into early childhood development that you've learned along the way, how the field's changed in 28 years, which I think, if anything, of any field, as far as what we know, has expanded in that realm of education. It's early childhood development. So, give us a little sense of that.
Yeah, the field really has changed a lot in the last 28 years. First of all, there was very much a perception, and still is a perception, that we are just babysitters, that these are little kids, that we just play with them all day. And that's not the case at all. I think over the years, the research has shown that brain development, the most crucial pieces of brain development, occur when children are, in fact, birth through 5 or 6 years old. That's when their brain has the most plasticity. They're making those neural connections. And so, what we've learned is that the interactions that kids have during these ages really kind of create some neural connections that last throughout their lifetime and really impact how they interact with each other, how they learn, how they process information. And so, of course, I think that what I do is very important. But the research bears me out and shows that, in fact, it is very important. And so, as people are increasingly realizing that what we do is really much more than childcare, there's been more of a focus on supporting early childhood education programs and adding them to schools.
Definitely know that. So, give us a sense of what those activities are. What is early childhood development as far as a routine day or a non-routine day for you kids?
Well, and so you hit the nail on the head with routine. One thing that we know is that young children really need to have clear, consistent expectations. And so, one of our jobs in the classroom is to just create rhythms and routines that enable them to sort of just focus on what they're doing. And then we also know that kids learn best through play. And so, obviously, at 3, 4, and 5 years old, it is not appropriate to expect little children just sit down and do worksheets. It's not appropriate to set them in front of a TV. So you want them to learn, but you also want them to have fun, and you want them to be actively engaged and have their hands on what they're doing. So, for example, when we come in the morning, we typically get together and do a greeting song. We want everybody to feel welcome. We use their names a lot so that they learn each other's names. And then we might do a question of the day. So, for example, our topic right now is we're learning about trees. My question of the day today was, which of these three items is from a tree? And so I had a couple things that were, and then one thing that wasn't. And we talked about that. We referred back to a book that we had read about trees. I could get really in depth with this, so I'll have to watch myself. But we also just provide lots of hands on activities, painting, there's puzzles, there's blocks to build with. There's a lot of science and exploration. So, for example, in our sensory table this week, we have acorns and pine cones and leaves, and then we have magnifying glasses so that the kids can examine them. What I might do to extend that learning then would be to bring over a clipboard and say, hey, let's write down some things that you guys are noticing. If they're at the painting at the easel, I might say, talk to me about the colors that you're using. I introduce vocabulary words like texture, lines, circles, and those conversations are very much tailored to each child and their age. So my classroom is a mixed age classroom. I do have 3, 4, and 5 year olds in it, as I mentioned. And so, obviously each conversation with each child looks a little bit different as you're scaffolding their learning.
So you talked about misconceptions and the what at least used to be probably less prevalent, but still prevalent, is the fact that you're not just doing daycare. It's
Yeah.
early childhood development. Anything else that that people wouldn't know about early childhood development?
Um, I think it's just been a really slow evolution, helping people understand what we do with kids. And so, for example, like the pay rate is not at all comparable to what early or what elementary teachers make. That's still something that we're advocating for. Um, the piece that I talked about how it's very different from elementary education, about how we're not sitting down, that we're moving our bodies, that we're engaging in hands-on activities. I find myself always asked to explain or articulate that. And so, what I've worked on in my years in the classroom and in the field is being able to explain to people what it is that we do and why we do it. To help people understand so that we can continue this advocacy piece of just getting people to realize the importance of it and the importance of us as educators.
What you've seen a lot of different early childhood educators come through your doors and what you do. What are some characteristics that make for a quality teacher in this particular field?
Well, if you want to work with young children, you definitely have to enjoy them. Um, they're intense. They're a lot of work. There's a lot of busy little bodies running around and moving around the classroom. And so you have to have fun with it. And you have to have a sense of humor. You have to enjoy building relationships with kids because they're so young. It's very important that they know that the people that are taking care of them are people that they can trust and count on. So just being calm and patient, building relationships with kids. You have to be pretty creative, I think, to always be coming up with activities and ideas that will engage them. You have to be a good communicator because you're communicating with people from 3 years old all the way up to parents and grandparents. You're communicating with other educators. Um, and so it really is a lot more challenging than people think. I get a lot of, oh, that must be fun to play with kids all day, every day. And while that's certainly a part of what we do, it's a little bit more involved than that.
Talk about the communication with the parents and grandparents and somewhat of the challenges that aspect of it where probably many students interested in the field wouldn't think about how important that is, and some things you sort of learned along the way in that communication cycle.
Sure. Well, I mean, these families are entrusting you with their most precious possession. They're really being asked to take on faith that you have the best interests of their kids at heart. So you have to be able to convey to them how you care about your children, how you care for their children. And sometimes you have to do it in really snapshot ways. And so a lot of those conversations occur at pickup, at drop off. So you're managing the group, but then you're also speaking with the families. You may be starting an activity, starting a song for 17 children while also trying to have a conversation with Billy's mom about why he might be tired or grouchy today. And that could be pretty challenging, but it's important. You always have to make time for that. The relationships piece is really at the forefront of my mind right now because our parents, our families are not allowed to come into the school right now because of the COVID regulations. And so we see them very, very briefly when we go out to retrieve the kids from the car or take the kids to the car. Um, we do a lot of communicating via email. And I've also created a classroom dojo so that I can show the parents pictures. This is what we're doing. This is our bulletin board. This is the art activity we did this week, and also message back and forth with them. But there's a lot of information that you need to convey about young children so that we know how to give them what they need. We need to know, did they sleep well last night? Is there something going on at home that might make them a little bit more sensitive? It's a big piece. The communication piece is big.
So 28 years and what is I most consider a very low paying field. What's the rewards that made you come back every August?
Yeah,
Um,
it is. I mean, you do have to enjoy it. The enjoyment piece, I can't overstate it. You have to have fun with it. You have to understand the impact of your work. So I know that by working with children, I'm giving them a strong foundation of problem solving and social emotional health that they're going to carry forward with them into the community. I know that by providing a quality environment for them, that I'm enabling their parents to go out in the world and work and do what they need to do. And that's important to me. I feel like that is a meaningful contribution to the world. And to me, a job is not just something that you do for money. It's how you make your mark. I don't know if that sounds a little egotistical, but it's what we're contributing. And so I feel like I'm contributing to society by supporting the healthy social, emotional, and cognitive development of young children, and by making sure that their families can go out in the world and do what they need to do.
so the education one needs, I'm sure there's kind of a sort of a gap there of what you could have and what you need to have.
Mhm.
Is it do typically you go into schools of education with early childhood development if you want to be a full classroom teacher, and then you have some aides on the side? Give me a little sense of like where
Yeah,
on that.
there's a little bit of a different structure to it. So first of all, I think we had touched on, how things have changed over the years, or maybe that's an upcoming question. Um, as we've grown in understanding about the importance of our field, um, we have expected teachers to have increasing educational levels. But because that's not commensurate with pay, it's a little bit challenging. And so, for example, I have my associate degree and I have 28 years of experience. And so I might make a little bit more than someone who just has a CDA, which is a child development accreditation. That's a little bit simpler and less formal way to get some initial education. Um, but you also do have people that go to school and get a 4-year degree in early child education. IU has an excellent early childhood program. So there are kind of different ways to approach it. Now, if you were to enter the field by working in a daycare, for example, they may not ask that you have any formal education, but they would certainly expect you to pursue some training. And there's some different training that's available to us online through the state of Indiana that's very helpful. Like I'm required to do a child abuse prevention and detection training every year. I'm also required to do trainings on the Indiana foundations, which is what we use to inform our planning here at school. Um, yeah, it just kind of varies wildly. Sorry if I'm kind of going all over the
No,
place with
and I knew it did. It like
yeah, it could just be different depending on where you're working and what the expectations are there. Like here, I do a lot of lesson planning,
mhm.
and then there's some conformity with the culture of the elementary school, and so they wanted somebody with at least some formal education, as well as experience to kind of juggle all those tasks.
Is there anything we haven't mentioned that you could touch upon your career or advice you would give to high school students sort of interested in this career?
Yeah. If you're interested in the career, make sure that you love children. Make sure that you are open and willing to take on a challenging job, with an open heart and with an open mind. Really go into daycares when we're able to again, go into schools and observe what those teachers are doing and think about what they're doing. Think about the piece that I touched on earlier about how we really contribute to society in a very important way. And I would encourage you. It's not a field that you're going to get rich on. It is a field that you're going to go home tired some days, overwhelmed some days, but it's also a field that has the potential to have a huge impact on young lives. And if that's something that you're interested in doing it, I would encourage you to pursue that.
Wonderful. I think that's a great way to end it, Chris. I appreciate you taking the time today, kind of giving us an overview of your 28 years and what early childhood development was and what it is now. So you have a good evening, and I thank everybody here for joining us. We'll see you next time.